Stackademic homework review session, where we will be taking some of our students' homeworks, which have been predominantly around creating single-page websites using CSS on HTML, of course. And we'll be looking at some of the ways that our students have used their CSS skills, including how they have used things such as Flex and Grid and things like that. And hopefully we can try and help with fixing any issues that may have arose during this. So let's take a sip of water and then we'll get started. Okay. Right, so the first work we'll take a look at is, let's take a look at daisies. So we will clone the repository. And what I've noticed is that when I'm trying to stream and I've got all of this stuff open, and my computer goes a little bit slow. So it might take a little bit longer sometimes to do bits. If anybody is present as well, please do leave a message in the chat so that I know you're there, and then I can at least make sure I check your homework out if it's still due. Okay. Right, so let's take a look at Daisy's work. Okay. So this was for week 4. So this means that usually there should be some responsive code in here. Okay, cool. So we've got Charu and we've got Papatuk. Hey, guys. Right, so let's take a look at this website. So on first inspection, looks like the things are mostly laid out how we would expect. There's something I think we can do with this image, which I will take a look at in a moment. But let's just see what happens as this website stretches and gets smaller. So, okay, so as we get smaller, okay, that's good. So it looks like we've got those turning into columns, whereas before they were horizontal. So that's good. Oh, cool. We've got Hafiz here as well. Hey, Hafiz. So, okay, that looks really good. Like it turns into vertical at a good size as well. So let's have a look at the CSS and check out what was used. Interesting as well. You've got Sass in here as well. So you've used the CSS pre-processor or post-processor even. So that's cool. So this looks pretty complex. And the reason for that is because of the use of Sass. But nevertheless, this looks good anyway. So I won't spend too much time looking at other bits. But one thing I do want to observe is this image that we've got at the bottom, because this map looks like it looks okay when it's like this. But when it's like this, it looks squashed. And it's not particularly nice to look at. So let's see what we can do to fix that. Something tells me this is going to be similar to what we did in yesterday's homework review, for anybody who can remember. So let's make this a bit bigger again. And then we've got this image here. And what we can do is add object fit. And then we can, I'm guessing that's not what was intended. It's the right ratio, the image, but obviously we've got the green around it, which I'm guessing is not what is desired. So what we could do is something like cover, and then at least it doesn't turn into the way it was before. Now, of course, the issue might be now that we're not seeing the right part of the map. So we could do object position, and then we could do things to move it if need be, like left or right and so on. So it could be something like that. Whereas if we take them off you'll see that it looks squashed. So we could use something like object fit. Okay, so that's cool. Happy with that homework though, it looks good. Right, let's take a look at Gary's good old Papatuk. Let's see what we're working with. Okay. Right, so let's end that last session and then open our live server with the new website. Here we go. Oh, okay, interesting. Let's try that again. Okay, that's my fault. It's being a bit strange. Here we go. Okay. Right, so now, Papatuk, you might need to guide me a little bit here because you mentioned that there was an issue with the lines appearing. I'm guessing you're referring to this, what we have here, the list of items. First off the bat, it's really interesting how you've got the coffee, the animated coffee there. That's cool. But I don't see these lines that you mentioned, and I'm using Chrome. So you might need to guide me on what you were referring to, because this looks fine to me. In the meantime, I'll just continue to look at other parts of the website, and then if you are there, Papatuk, if you can try to explain to me again in the chat what the issue was with the lines, because I'm not seeing them here, so I can't fix something that I cannot see. Okay. Oh, yeah. Put a copy on Discord. So I've closed Discord now. Let me reopen it because I had to close it because there were too many things open on my computer. But I saw the image that you were referring to. But this is the infamous dilemma that a lot of developers go through, where they'll say, "But it looks fine on my computer." So in my case, it looks fine. In your case, it doesn't, and it's hard to understand what the issue is because I'm using Chrome as well, and I don't see the lines appearing. Let me see if you've added anything additional in our chat. So yeah, I mean, it's just those lines you mentioned. I cannot understand what's causing those because I don't see them here. The only thing that I could deduce is that for some reason maybe there was a border bottom, but it doesn't look like you have those in your styles. There's nothing to suggest that you had those. So, for example, if you had border bottom on pixel solid. So if you had something like that, then maybe I'd notice it, but there's nothing to suggest that they're in here. So it's really difficult to diagnose that problem because I cannot see it. But Rachel's here as well. Hey, Rachel. But this coffee thing you've got here is interesting. So nice use of a GIF as well to do that. And you had a different image here, which is cool. So some interesting thinking there. I like it. Okay. But generally, this looks pretty good. I mean, if we take a look at the grid, just to make sure, I mean, it looks like you've got a good understanding of it because presumably the GIF, the coffee GIF, is your intention is for it to take up 2/3 of the width. And that's exactly what you've done with the grid template columns in the bottom right hand corner. I don't know if you can see it on the screen there, but you're using one fraction, two fraction. So that's doing exactly what you would expect it to. So that's good. That looks like you have a good understanding of that part of grid. I like this. I'm happy with this. It's cool. Does anything happen with the navigation as we get smaller? Okay. So the only thing we could maybe suggest here is that as we get to this smaller size, um, is maybe something we should do with the Coffee Hut text and this image behind it. So maybe some sort of something to format it a little bit differently. So let's see what we're using so far. Okay, so we've got this header. Okay, I see. So it's interesting. So you're using grid for this part as well. Let's see what's going on with these images. Okay, so okay, this is interesting. So the thing here that I notice is that you're using a grid to separate the sections, so that's fine. But then the elements inside of it, you're not necessarily following those instructions because you're using visual width and visual height. So visual width is not necessarily going to play well with the grid elements. Whereas something like a percentage, I imagine, is going to potentially work a bit better. I mean, let's see what happens if we just change this to 100%. Okay, and then what happens here? Okay, then for the logo title, it doesn't look like we've got any classes on here, but we're rather just using it. So that's okay. I mean, I guess you've given it a name, but you've not attached any classes to it. So I guess it's just for semantic purposes. What I would suggest here is that we don't necessarily need to use a grid for for this. It feels a little bit like overkill. So it's not a bad thing as such, but if you can remember in one of the lessons, we mentioned that it's perfectly fine to use grid and flex in the same website. You should use grid when it's required, when you are trying to make some sort of layout that maybe has multiple sections with different widths and heights and things like that. If you're just basically doing something fairly simple where it's maybe a 2-column layout, it's probably easier to just use flex so that it doesn't feel like overkill. So for the header, maybe we would, if I was doing this, I'd probably just use something like flex. Or instead, in fact, what I'd do is flex normally. Let's bring this out a bit more again. So min width. Yeah, so flex for that. Here we could do something such as flex flow column line items center. So if you wanted to still have it as a horizontal thing, I'd maybe do something like this for the when we're targeting smaller. Oh, geez, what's going on here? Okay, so a lot of this is not necessary. It's not bad, it's just a bit overkill. Oh, do you know, it looks like there's a lot of additional classes in here. It's okay, it's fine anyway. I think you caught the drift of it from before. Let's take a look at this order page. But it's a good layout and everything. It looks like you've got a lot of classes in there that are not necessary, and there are probably simpler ways to do some of the things. But it's okay. I mean, I appreciate that's part of the kind of trial and error phase when you're getting used to CSS. But yeah, so if we have a look at this order page, so right, that looks cool. Let's go back to it again. I like it. It looks cool. The only thing I'd potentially do in the future is just make sure everything lines up perfectly. So you'll notice how the input fields are not kind of vertically consistent with one another because of the size differences. It's a fairly easy thing to fix, though. Generally, what it may require is actually there's a few ways to it. There's a few ways to fix that kind of thing. We could do something such as put a fixed width on each item. And there's different ways we could target this, to be fair. We could even do things like making sure each label has display of block so that they go below each other. And to be fair, there's a few ways we can target it. Again, it's not this isn't really a design lesson, so that's cool. But no, this is good. I think you've made some real good progress with this in the short time that you've been studying with us. So you can be happy with that. That's really good. Cool. Okay. Yep. Tara's here as well. Good to see you. I'm just thinking, is there anyone in the room who has homework I should check out? I'm not sure if I can see any of your names. So that's okay. Let's take a look at this one. In fact, I already had a look at that one the other day. Let's take a look at this one. Okay. Right. Okay, cool. Interesting. Right. Okay. So, footwear company. Oh, wow. I really like this. I really like the way you've laid out these elements. Good use of flex or grid, whichever one you've used. It looks good. Right. Okay. Looks like we've got some interesting effects coming on with these. Whenever you hover over things, brings up some text. And I think from a design perspective, the text could definitely be improved on that. But in terms of just layout, I really like it. Interestingly, I mean, if we stretch the screen all the way, the items still kind of maintain that size. It looks like you've done good work with the interesting as well as we go to that. Okay, that's really good. I like that. Let's take a look at the CSS. Okay, cool. So yeah, we've got some media queries here. That's fine, and we're just targeting padding, so that's cool. Okay, let's take a look at the inspector, and we can figure out what's going on here. Let's see how this has been achieved. Okay. Right, interesting. It's interesting that you've used a list element for each of these items. Um, I'm not sure if that is a bad practice or not, really. I'm not too sure. I mean, typically you'd use lists for, well, lists like written items. I've not seen them used before for something like this. Um, so it's not. I don't think it's a bad thing as such, but I've not seen it before. It's thrown me off. I would expect this to rather just be a section, and then for each of these to be images or links or divs. So we've got flex basis. So as we take that off, you can see what happens. So that's cool. Interesting. Okay. So what you have done is used flex, and this is an interesting thing because this looks like a layout that might require a grid, but it really doesn't. You can do the same kind of thing with just Flexbox, where we've got this kind of thing that reminds me a little bit of like Pinterest, um, but it's just elements. And what you have done is you've got two different classes, small and large, and basically small is saying, okay, take up 40% of the width. Large is saying, okay, take up 60% of the width. And then that creates 100%, of course, but then you've got padding in between to push the items in. So really, really smart way to do this. I really like this. For anyone who's watching, I would look at this way of laying out items as something to take inspiration from. Not necessarily using unordered lists and list items to do this. That seems a bit strange, but the actual way that you've positioned items is really good. With this flex basis 40% and 60% here, you could even you should pretty much just be able to do this as width 40% as well, and it will do the same thing. So if we change these from flex basis to width, you'll see nothing changes. It still does the same thing. So if you feel more comfortable just using width, which I generally do, some people would like to use flex basis in that case, because at least if you see flex basis in the CSS, you know that the container is a flex container. But if you prefer to just use width because you're used to it, then that's fine as well. So really good piece of homework. I like this. I like this a lot. So we'll mark that one as complete. Let's grab another one. So let's take a look at Kelechi's. Oops. Okay. Right. So which one was that again? Oh, this one. Okay. Whoa, these have got some strange looking file names here. Let's see what happens if we try to open them. I hope it should still work. Cool. So one thing I'm just going to point out is these file names. So this looks really strange to me, how it's all in capitals and it's got an equal sign at the beginning. It works fine, as you can see, but this is not what you should be calling files. So this should just be index, all lowercase without the equals, and then style. In this case, should just be style. And of course, we've broken something. That's fine. That's expected because we need to update the name here as well. So, I mean, look, it doesn't break anything, but it's a convention for a reason. And part of convention is the fact that a lot of people will be used to it. So if you're working in a team, for example, you want that consistency. Okay, so first thing I can notice is this image isn't loading. So let's just take a look to figure out why that is. It looks like we've got some copied URL here. So I'm guessing this URL is just broken rather than it being an issue, because it looks like you've put the image in right. Okay. So cool. Okay, you've embedded a video in here. That's nice. Presumably this works as well. Okay, it's not. Let's see if there's any reason why. Interesting. Okay, and you can see here that my linter is saying there's a few issues with this. We're using an iframe. Okay, so this error is probably due to the fact that I'm trying to embed a YouTube video, but I've not got any permission to do so. So that can happen. There are ways around it. You probably need to just embed a video rather than an iframe. And potentially you have to use a video that you're allowed to use. This looks like a strange looking website, youtube.nocookie.com. So this looks like it's probably a website that's a bit strange. Maybe, I could be wrong. Maybe it's something I've just never heard of. Anyway, okay, we've got some images here at the bottom that aren't working either. So first off the bat, I can see some issues here. So the images have not been put in the repository. So these images do not exist on my computer. And they don't exist in the GitHub repository. So be mindful of that. If you're going to use some local images, they need to be in the repository, not just somewhere on your computer. Another thing as well is just be mindful of this. There seems to be a space in this URL or this source, and you can't have that. If the file does have a space in it, there's something like %20 or something you can put, which is basically the equivalent to having a space in the file. But nevertheless, let's see what happens if we make this website smaller. Okay, so one thing I've noticed is that the navigation at the top turns into a column, so that's cool. That's good. Let's take a look at how that has been achieved. For anyone watching along, if you have any ideas in your head as to how you think that has been achieved, by all means, put it in the comment, and we'll see if you're right. Okay, so we've got this flex and stuff. Yeah, that's cool. And then flex wrap. That seems a little bit strange. I would have just used column there, done flex flow column, rather than trying to wrap it at a certain point. And then this looks a little bit strange because I'm guessing these navigation things are not meant to just be overflowing with where this image was. And the reason here is it looks like we're doing a bit of a strange width on it. We've done width 35 VW. So I don't think that's necessarily the best way to approach this, because you're saying, okay, 35% of the available width. What would probably be better is to do 100%. Say, okay, I can take up the entire width. And if you want the items to still be on the left-hand side or the right-hand side, then you can use justify content to say where you want them to be. So it looks like you had it something like that, but maybe we could do flex end. And then what we could do maybe is say for each item, let's put a 5 pixel. Oh, sorry, wait, not on that. But we could say on each item, so that they're not just all squashed up next to each other, we could maybe target the lists and say, okay, have margin of 5 pixels now. Let's go with 10. You could do something like that to stretch them out. So we put a margin of 0, 10 pixels, which means we've put two values on it. The first targets the margin top and the margin bottom. The second targets the margin left and the margin right. And we're saying, okay, put 10 pixels of space on the left and the right of each item in there. So cool. This looks fine with me though. So cool. A couple of kind of administrative things that could have been improved on there, but we've covered them here. So hopefully that helps. Let's quickly take a look at this one from Saint. I don't think we need to necessarily clone this repository because this piece of homework is just to see if semantic HTML was used. So we can just take a look at it on the screen here. Okay, so yeah, we've got an aside. That's cool. We're using a nav as well. That's great. Using header, using article, using sections, using a footer. Okay, that's really good. I'm happy with that one. That's that's great. And then we've even got the aside outside of the main, which is what you're meant to do. So that's really good. Happy with that one. So we'll mark that as complete. Okay, and let's do, how many have we got? Let's do one more then. So let's take a look at Rachel's. So you said you haven't submitted it yet, unless you've just done this now, in which case that's amazing. So let's take a look at it. Oops, I've cloned nothing just then. Interesting. Doesn't seem to be there. Let's see what's happened. Yeah, you've just submitted it. Cool. So you might need to guide me because that link didn't work. So is it this one here, K Responsive Challenge 4? Or is it the DH redesign? Something tells me it's this DH redesign because it was done 19 minutes ago. Okay. All right, so let's grab that. Okay. Okie dokie. Right, so we've copied it. Let's take a look. The moment of truth, Rachel. Let's see how it looks. Okay, cool. Right, let me just get the code up as well. Okay. Right, so I just want to check because something tells me your images aren't loading. Well, it doesn't look like they are at the bottom. Something tells me you've probably got an image up here as well in the top. So let's take a look, see why it's not loading. Okay, so you've got your images there, so that makes sense. Let's take a look. Assets, logo. Let's just try that again. In fact, let's close it. Let's just try and open this again with a live server. Okay. All right, why are they not opening with the images? Because I can see your image, I can see your assets file folder because I've got them here. So let's try and take off the slash for a second. Okay, so we found our first issue. Sometimes the / at the beginning is required locally, but sometimes it's not required in other situations. So let me just see if this still works. Okay, so I don't know if you can definitely see this. I'm going to try and zoom in a bit more. Oh, wow. Okay, that's too much. Here we go. Okay, so we had this URL here. Okay, and before it was like this, where it just was beginning with a /. Now, there's two ways around it. One is just to take the slash off, and the reason is just because it's the assets folder and the index file are in the same directory. They're in the same level, so you don't need to put that slash at the beginning. You can just start like that. But another way you can tackle this is put a dot at the beginning and then put the slash. In this case, the dot is saying, okay, I'm in the same folder, I'm in the root of the directory, and then I can do a slash. So there is a possibility we're going to need to do this for all of these. So let's just grab that. And if I press Command and D or Control and D on Windows devices, I can start to just grab every single one. Hopefully I can just put a dot at the beginning. And now if I load this again, hopefully it's going to load all the images. Okay, cool. So we've got some images here. Let's bring this a little bit down again so I can actually read it properly. Okay. So yeah, this looks really nice and clean. I like this. We've maybe got a bit too much white space, and we could potentially bring this. We could potentially have it like this, and then have these bits, this text a little bit higher. But again, this isn't a design session, so I'll try not to critique too much. Let's see what happens as we reduce the screen. Okay, so that looks good. I like that. And then you've got everything's aligned nicely as well. I'm guessing this is exactly how you wanted it, with everything kind of in the middle here, but then the quotes are a little bit left and right and so on. And your contact section looks really good, really nice and clean. Let's just take a look at, I just want to take a look at one thing, this professional grooming kind of title we've got here. I just want to see how we're doing this this hero image bit. So, okay. Okay, interesting. So I see what you've done here. So you've used top to push it down quite a lot. So what I would suggest is I wouldn't do that on there. What I would do is, in fact, yeah, where is this image? Let me just put that there. There we go. Right, okay. There must have been one that I didn't grab. Okay, so now this makes a bit more sense. So apologies for that. Okay, there we go. I think that's what you were saying in the chat as well. So I didn't understand at first. Okay, so that's cool. I really like this image as well. Really good. One thing maybe we could do is, instead of doing top on here, we could do align items. Sorry, not align items. Oh, actually, you could do align items and then. Oh no, sorry, wait. Justify items. Justify content. I always get confused sometimes with these. Where is it on here? Hero image display flex. There we go. So I potentially do something like this. Okay, there's a second one on the services. Okay. So why haven't these images all fixed themselves when I did the assets thing? Let's have a look at. Okay, Hero Desktop. Okay, not to worry if there were some images that haven't loaded up. It will be because of that URL thing that I've mentioned. So it would just be a case of going back and either putting a period at the beginning and so on. So actually, yeah, you're right. Thank you for pointing that out, Mickey. You know, sometimes when you're looking at something and you end up looking at you spend time looking at something else, and the next thing you know, you've missed it. So yeah, there you go. Good point. Thank you for pointing that out, Mickey. So there we go, and then the image is there. Okay. So one thing we've done here with the hero image is I put display flex on the hero image. It's Ibrahim. Okay. So I'm calling you Mickey because that's your name on YouTube. Okay. So Ibrahim, also known as Mickey M, which is maybe Mickey Mouse. I don't know. But yeah, on hero image, we've put display flex. And then that allows us to put justify content on the hero title and just put it in the middle. That's going to be... okay, so it's a little bit broken when we change it, but that'll be because the other responsive styles need taking care of. But ultimately, yeah, but it would be better to just use flex to position items in the middle and things like that. When you start to go into the realms of using things like top 30 REM, it just becomes unmanageable because you'll constantly have to start adjusting it for lots of different sizes, rather than trying to stick to something that's a bit more natural, let's say. In other words, like, okay, top, middle, bottom. Whereas 30 REM is just, it will look different on so many different devices. So I'd bear that in mind. But overall, this is really good. I think you can be really happy with this. And the design's pretty good as well. But yeah, as you've said, Rachel, it did feel a bit hacky. That's exactly it. It feels hacky. Like, and when you're coding and things start to feel hacky, it's indicative of the fact that there probably is a cleaner way to do it. But it's okay if you didn't know that in the first time. Like, that's absolutely fine. I mean, I said a while ago that I'd love to spend some time just going through some of the very first websites I ever created, just so you can kind of see some of the stuff I wrote and some of the designs I made and how they just weren't particularly good compared to where I am now. And it's the same process that everyone goes through, but really good. I like this. I think in terms of the design as well, it shows that you've got a creative spirit, and it'll be super interesting to see how your designs come on, like with future projects. Okay, so someone. Oh yeah. Okay, so Ibra, let me see if I can find your piece. Here we go. Okay. Consortium of Web Services, and we'll make this the last one we take a look at for today. So, okay. Okay. Right. So, Ibra, we are taking a look at yours right now. And Rachel, you're more than welcome. I hope you all know as well that when I say these things, I genuinely do mean it. I'm not just saying it for the sake of it. Okay. So the first thing is the CSS isn't loading, and this is the exact same issue that we mentioned in the previous one. So it will be because of the file location. So we've got this issue here. I'm guessing Ibrahim probably already knows what the issue is, and it's this. We either take rid of that slash or we put a dot at the beginning. Let's refresh this. See if it loads everything. Here we go. Okay, so we've got some style coming in. Let's just make sure we've not got any others we need to fix. Okay, now that looks fine. Looks like you're using external images. So, okay. So let's see how things move. Okay, so okay, so it looks like, to be fair, this is homework week 3. So this is before you would have used any of the responsive things, responsive codes. That's fine. So let's just take a look at the CSS that we've got in here. Okay, so there are a few things that we can definitely improve here. In fact, to be fair, it looks like you're using display flex already. So let's just take a look at what we could do to make these images not get so squashed on smaller screens, like as we've got here, for example. So as we get to this section, okay, what have we got? Home cards. Okay, interesting. So you've used grid here. So that's fine, but we need some responsive code to make it not look like this. So, I mean, what happens if we change this to rows? So you see here, just like that, it turns it into a row. So what I would suggest is that as this screen gets to, let's change it back. So as this gets to about somewhere around here, so about 900 pixels or something, I would have a media query that changes this from grid template columns to grid template rows. Oops. And then you've got it like that. And then you can start to position these in the center and things like that. So Hafiz is saying, what does the period do? I did not get it. So it's to do with, okay, so if you had, in fact, I'll come back to that in a moment. Let me just, I'll just finish looking at this website. So, okay, so that's the main thing I would say is do something to make this look as a column. Now, with regards to your CSS, there are a few things that jump out to me. But these are things that we didn't cover until the Monday that's just gone. And it's having a methodology in place for writing consistent looking CSS. So the first thing I notice is these 3 here. So the body bit is fine. That's normal. But here we're targeting an ID and it's called list-menu. And then all of a sudden the next one we're doing a class and we called it list items and we're using camel case. So that's not a good practice. I would do something to have some consistency here, and I would just never use IDs. I'd never use IDs when you're doing CSS. Use IDs for navigation and JavaScript. Don't use it for CSS. So let's take a look at this thing you mentioned with the images. So, okay. Okay, so there we go. So I mean, there's some issues to do with the heights as well. So you might even have to put some sort of min height on the container div and not the image. But one thing we mentioned as well in last week, I believe it was, when we're looking at how to do responsive design, is don't hard code the width of an image. At the very least, if you are going to hard code a width, make sure you've got a maximum on it still as well. But really, what you should do is do something like max width 100%, and then you won't end up with these kind of distorted looking images. And then this one, image card 3. So okay, we're starting to get something that's a bit better. Right, what I would suggest you do with this, because I think it'll take us quite a while to fix this in this session, is if I was you, I would have this div that you've got here, the one that's being highlighted, and do this for all three of these. You shouldn't have 3 separate classes for each one. It should be one class that does the job really well, and then you can use it across them, and you can keep using it again. And it does the same thing over and over again. What I would suggest is you have this div, and then you have maybe 2 inner divs inside of it, and you do something to do with flex to make it so that each of those takes up 50% of the size, and then you place your image in the top 50%, and you make it fill the space. And then the second half is just the text, and because you've given it a height, it should have some consistency. So it's quite a bit for you to do there. So don't worry if you don't understand it. But I would do something like that. One thing I've noticed is a lot of you using grid, and grid's not bad, but it's overkill. Flex will do a lot of these things, and it will do probably a better job when it comes to doing certain things. Whereas if you've not got a really good idea of grid, then it can be a bit frustrating. And grid is sometimes useful for doing the think of it like this: if you had a house, grid could be good for separating the house into rooms of different sizes and things like that, and different locations. But the content inside the room, it's easier to sometimes just use flex for that, for positioning items within the room, if that makes sense. If you start using grid for everything, it just becomes really confusing, and you end up in a bit of a mess, and it's not the best idea. So that's cool, though. I mean, look, that was week 3. So I think if you take the lessons from the Monday that's just gone, and don't be afraid to re-watch the previous lesson. Take that information and try again with week 4 and see how it goes. Okay, so Avais, I'll take a look at yours, and then we'll call it a day. And I will try, if possible, to explain that thing to Hafiz. Okay. Okay, what was that file called? Okay, yep, so this is not the correct link. Let's have a look. Okay. Interesting. So you've put your website on Netlify as well. In fact, let's just take a look at that instead of cloning the repository. And I'll take a look at the code here. So let's make this one a bit bigger. Okay, so again, for the 10th time, I'll say it. I know this isn't a design session, but I will talk about the design. And I like this. It looks cool. nice and clean. So well done for that as well. Well done. I like this. Got some images here as well. Bunch of different text. So let's take a look at the good as well. So we're using semantic HTML. We've got this container. So where is this? Okay, cool. So we've got a H1 with an image in it. That seems a bit strange. I wouldn't put an image inside of a H1. It should just be text inside of any of the H elements. So I would change that. Okay, nav looks good. Okay, yeah, that looks really good. Okay, and then let's see what we've got going on here. Okay, yeah, so that looks good as well. You're using width 100%, which is exactly what we were saying. You've got a max width on it. That's cool. So that's good. So that means as we make this smaller, our elements will shrink as well. Let's see what we could do to make this look a little bit better. So we can see we've got a little bit of an issue here because we've got all this text on the right-hand side, but our image is not big enough for it. So one thing we could do is potentially just not have this kind of layout here. As we get smaller, we should probably consider stacking these instead with Flex. So we've got this about bottom here. So that's cool. You are using Flex anyway. What I would do is Flex, flow, row, reverse. No, let's go with row. And then left panel, make it 100%. Right panel, 100%. And of course, this image is massive though. So what we'll do is we'll put a height on this one of like 200 pixels or something. Oh, interesting. Okay, that's not right. Something is causing something strange here. Let's figure out what's causing it. All right, we've got something that's overflowing, and it will be because there's something not quite right. It's hard to see at the moment. Are you using any position absolute or position relative or anything like that? That's what I want to know. Like what's causing all of this? Or is it just because this is a background image? Ah, wait, is it because this also needs 200 pixels? There we go. It was just that. Okay, and then of course this looks squashed, so we'll fix that as well with object fit. And we'll go with cover and then object position. Go with maybe something like that. And we could always make this a bit bigger. Go with 400. Still something not quite right though. Right, okay. Wait, 200 pixels, 400 pixels. So you can see this is some of the issues that you start to have when you play with height, and you shouldn't. But I'd do something like that. Uh, like you need something responsive to turn this into a column because there's too much text there for it to sit in 50%. Um, but let's have a look. Okay, I really like what you've done with the navigation at the top as well. So you've got them stacked at a good size like that. This width at the moment here, that looks really good. That top navigation, like the spacing's really good, yeah, I just really like it. I don't know whether maybe you've taken inspiration from some similar looking websites or whatever it is that you've done to arrive at this point, but it's good. Keep it going. So yeah, I really like this. Like this is a really good start. So yeah, I like it. I like it. It's cool. The only thing I'd suggest as well is the CSS looks a bit strange. The names for the CSS look a bit strange. So again, it kind of goes back to what we were talking about on Monday, and maybe seeing if you can take some of that advice from Monday's lesson and use it in the future. So, okay, that's cool. Let's mark that one as complete. Okay, so we won't look at any more homework. I'll just try and explain this thing that I was saying to about the full stop. So let's take some. Right, let's just get a new tab. Hopefully you can see this. So let's imagine that let's imagine that this is a folder. Oh, actually, you know what? That's really difficult to read, isn't it? There we go. Okay. So this is a folder, okay? And in our folder, we've got our index.html, and we've got style.css. Yeah, exactly, directories, yeah. So let's say we've got that, and then we've got assets, okay, which is a folder. Let's say in our folder, we've got one image, which is image1.png. Okay, so when we're writing our code, say in our index.html, so and let's say we want right, okay, so this is our index.html file, and if we want to link to something, so say we want to link to this style this style element, as you'll know, you'll start writing something like link source or whatever. Now, some of you have been doing this to target the file, and this can sometimes work on your own computer, but it won't necessarily always work in other devices. It can sometimes depend on the operating system as well. So it could be that in your Windows environments, this just works all the time. But one thing to bear in mind is that, I'm using a Mac, right? But that's not important. But that could be why it's not working. What's more important is that a lot of the internet and the servers on the internet use Linux, and it can process directories in a different way. So if you want to target style and it's in the same level, in the same directory, in the same folder, then you can either do it like that, or a better way is to use a dot, and then you have your slash. So that's how it might have been before, and you put the dot here. And what the dot says is it's saying, okay, I'm starting in this folder. So if this is a folder, let's say this folder was called website, the dot is saying, when it comes to trying to find the file, it's saying, okay, start here, start inside website. In fact, if anything, it's the dot with the slash. The dot with the slash is saying, okay, start here, and then look in there. If I were to put two dots, what this would say is come out of this website directory, and let's say I'm in some other folder that's above the website, then it's going to do that. It can be a little bit strange to kind of wrap your head around. So I can imagine, Hafiz, that still doesn't make sense to you. What you need to spend time learning is how to navigate a file system. If you start to do that in, say, the terminal, then you'll start to understand a bit more about how to navigate things. So, for example, let's put how to navigate the terminal. I imagine there's a bunch of websites here and videos that you could just have a look at. So yeah, the very folder where index is. Yeah, if you do dot, then that's saying yes, that's where you want to start. In fact, for example, if we look at what we've got here, in fact, I could probably show you a little bit in the terminal here. So this is a little bit of an impromptu lesson, but hopefully it makes sense. Let's just clear that and start again. So navigating a terminal is going to be really powerful and really useful to you. It's just taking a moment to load because it's slow. Here we go. Okay, so at the moment I am in the Stackademic Teaching folder, okay, which is this very top folder here. The top folder is just called Stackademic Teaching for me. If I wanted to go into this folder here called Apartments, I would do CD, which is short for change directory. I put CD Apartments and press enter. And then you can see now I'm in Apartments. Okay. So if I wanted to now, so I'm in here. If I wanted to target this index.html, I could either write index.html or I'd do ./index.html. So that's how you target it. But if I were to write /index.html, what it thinks is, okay, this is a folder. It thinks I'm looking for a folder called index.html, but I'm not. It's a file, not a folder. If I want to just target the file in there, then I can do index. I can do like that. Now, dot would take me out of this Apartments folder. So if I do cd dot, I come back into Stackademic Teaching. So that's what two dots do. So yeah, a little bit of an impromptu lesson. We will definitely spend more time doing this. And in fact, I might make it so that next week's kind of mini lesson is just how to navigate through directories, how to use Git and GitHub and things like that, rather than like a CSS lesson or anything. Because as we've said, we've finished that module. Anyway, we'll wrap it up there. I hope that's been useful for anyone watching along. And yeah, just whatever it is you're doing, whatever time zone you're in, I hope the rest of your day is okay. So take care, everybody. Bye.